There are so many great indie games out at the moment, and with more releasing by the day, I simply struggle to find the time to sit down and play them all. At the beginning of this year, I started a series on this channel called Indie Hour, where each episode I take a look at smaller games from independent developers to critique, analyse, or otherwise point and laugh at, and in the process showcase what these teams work on, in what I plan to be a monthly series, so I guess I was half successful. I did manage, however, to sit down and play a few games throughout the year that I figured didn't really warrant a full video in and of themselves, but felt I wanted to yap about nonetheless, and rather than make several smaller videos, I figured why not one special episode to wrap up the year. So, without further ado, to round together this past year's indie games I didn't make videos on, here is 2024's Indie Hour Catch-Up. Earlier this summer I was perusing the PlayStation Plus catalogue when I came across 100 Days, a game I had scrolled past many a time, and yet this one time something made me click on it. Something supernatural? No, not really. I just thought I'd finally look at it, and clicking on it realised it was 100 Days, winemaking simulator. Now it had my attention. You see, I like my wine, sometimes to my own detriment, and have always had this novel fantasy seeing an older version of myself winning the lottery and running a vineyard. Not sure why I imagine an older me running one, perhaps because I associate it with big success and ownership of something fancy and complex, yet serene and relaxed one could do in their latter years. Or maybe I just watched Assassin's Creed Embers and, like an 11-year-old me would do, just made it an intrinsic part of my personality forever, who's to say? Regardless, the fantasy of having your own vineyard resonates with me to this day, and clearly others as well, enough to make a sim for it, thought Broken Arms Games, insane name for a game company. There really aren't too many games that offer this particular fantasy, the only thing I've ever come across being the epilogue for The Witcher 3's final expansion, where it's only ever really teased you with the idea of running a vineyard, letting you upgrade things but not being something you can actively participate in, although for some reason you can brew mutagens in the cellar. Not sure what purpose that held once I'd finished the game. Anyway, why am I talking about The Witcher 3? Probably got Witcher on my mind since the new one was announced. Got ugly and woke Ciri. This business simulation fantasy is one that's always appealed to me, no more so than in GTA Online. Seriously, it's worrying the amount of hours, no, days of my life I've toiled away into that game. They should really release GTA 6 and shut down the servers, I need help. So when 100 Days came onto my radar, I was hyped to give it a go, although running a winery wasn't nearly as easy as I'd first imagined. The game functions with a top-down RTS style mechanic and has you play on grids across your vineyard. Story mode, which I imagine most players will select first on account of being unfamiliar with the game, throws you into the life of Emma, who inherits some land from a relative and gives up her boring office job to pursue greater goals. This beginning section is actually a fun way to introduce the game's mechanics while showing how repetitive an office job is, so they get points for this. Along the story you encounter a multitude of characters which for a game like this are fleshed out as much as they need to be, all of who act as tutorials for the various tasks, methods and potential dangers that come with the running of a vineyard and winery. There's also a story that comes along with story mode, who would have guessed it, and it's fairly shallow but also engaging enough, I suppose. Meeting contacts, all of whom have some sort of unique characteristics, and dealing with a rival winemaking competitor are a couple of the plot points I recall. I guess they gave a narrative a shot, and to be fair, it's really only a handful of conversations and cutscenes which know not to overstay their welcome, so I can't complain. The goal of the game has you bringing this debilitated vineyard back to life so it can prosper. Core gameplay involves the various stages of the growing and winemaking process. Planting, having you analyse and prepare the soil for the correct grapes. Tending, having you protect your crops from disease. Harvesting, picking the right time and conditions to get your preferred balance of quantity and quality, followed by the manufacturing process before aging, tasting, selling, transporting and the eventual profiting to reinvest back into the business. After selling your wine, you are then left to choose from upgrading equipment, purchasing and expanding your fields and warehouses to grow more grape varieties and store more product, or if you so desire, choose to invest in side tasks to expand your marketing opportunities. All of this is incredibly in-depth and has plenty of options for you to take your pick, from grape type to harvesting equipment, the type of barrels you want to age your wine in and for how long, even to the final stage of bottling, letting you choose your design and labelling. It's honestly almost a bit educational, truth be told, and left me coming away with a greater understanding of the complexities of winemaking, which makes sense given the development of the game was led by a man who grew up and spent his life working on his family's Italian winery. As the seasons and eventually the years go by, you'll level up and unlock more advanced equipment to complete your tasks quicker and to a higher quality. All the tasks you need to complete are done on the main grid here, which you can expand to have multiple tasks running optimally at once to be as efficient as possible. I actually failed the story the first time I played, with this man quite abruptly popping up telling me I have too many debts and then getting a game over screen, which forced me to start from scratch since I hadn't saved. But But since I was familiar with how the game worked, after a couple hours I blasted through it on my next attempt, finishing the story and moving on to an endless mode run, which lets you customise more of the settings and parameters of the game, but its gameplay was nothing I hadn't done already in story mode. Once you understand the game, get a flow going, you reach a certain level of satisfaction, but then quite quickly, although you are doing well, something is taken away from the enjoyment of the game when you realise how to be efficient, almost making it feel more like a process needing to be played out and completed, rather than a game to be played and enjoyed. Eventually, it just got boring repeating the same actions, letting time pass and doing it all over again. Once you've reached the millions and got that admittedly oh so satisfying 100 out of 100 wine score with nothing more to buy or upgrade, there really isn't anything else to do in the game. There are challenge modes which have set goals such as producing particular wines of a certain quality, reaching $1 million in your bank account, which isn't much of a challenge in retrospect given how much I had by my endgame, or reaching a certain fame level for your winery, all of which I could see someone finding the value of investing time into, but for me I felt I'd had my fun and spent the time I wanted to with the game. Even the Napa Valley expansion is really only a new place to complete all of these same actions, so you're just doing it looking at a slightly different environment. As if to come full circle in itself, the game's opening, having you go through the monotonous tasks that come with an office job, are ironically recreated once you've put half a dozen hours into running your vineyards. I don't regret the time I spent with 100 Days, but I suppose my search for the perfect vineyard simulator will have to continue. Around Christmas time, I picked up one of the simplest little games I've ever played, but I mean that in the best way possible. Hidden Paws is a game in which you have one objective: find some cats, and it takes its no-nonsense design seriously. I mean, literally, you boot up the game and it doesn't even have a title screen, just bam, find the cat. As you may have deduced from the title, they are hidden however, tucked away in every little nook and cranny of each of the 20 total levels. The gameplay consists of a freeform camera, which, I won't lie, has some interesting controls, but I suppose I got used to them after a few of the levels. Essentially, you hover the camera about, and once you find them, click on the cats, as well as various balls of yarn also scattered around each level, with the HUD giving you a clue to the colour of at least some of the remaining yarn. Strangely, not doing the same for the cats though. You can click on either square or triangle to get an idea of where the closest cat is located, only it's not very helpful in later levels when it just tells you it's near a house and, well, this is what the level looks like. Thanks for that tip, lads, really helpful. Soon you begin to piece together where the devs could have placed the cats, only that doesn't mean they're definitely there. It really does turn the tables on the cat and mouse formula. Is this guy piloting this boat? Or although the occasional kitty is found within the first few seconds of the level, who the hell is drinking out of this cat-sized mug? Some of these cats are really good at hiding in plain sight, since your brain is mainly focused on all of the more obvious places they could be. For such a simple little game I thought would be easy in the first few levels, I soon found myself the fool I am for assuming the devs would have made them all equally as easy. 16 levels along with 4 Christmas levels are a perfect amount in all honesty. Any more and the gameplay would have gone stale and repetitive. I think the levels are designed just right to dupe you out into thinking you found the perfect place a cat would be hiding, and it keeps the hunt engaging. Progressing further and further, each and every cat becomes more difficult to find. The levels become larger and more elaborate as you begin to slowly lose your sanity, scraping around each and every object at the ever increasingly cluttered levels, thinking one must be here, only for it to be another false spot. This strange urge I had knowing I couldn't let the level beat me and I had to find every cat took over as I soon turned over every pot, opened every box and swung wide every window shutter to no avail. The completionist in me just wouldn't allow it. Never has a game been as equally frustrating and satisfying at the same time. The Christmas levels are even more festive to play than the base game, with decorations in all the trees, snowmen adorned with scarves and presents that open up in all 4 levels, although they are a bit glitchy to load into for some reason, and the square and triangle help buttons simply do not work in these levels, so good luck if you're struggling, I guess. I never really struggled in this game though, nor did I need a guide to help me, albeit I was close with the final level. Oh my god, what happened here? Is he dead? Anyway, the final level where I just couldn't find the last ball of yarn, only for it to be staring me in the face the whole time. This was one of the coziest pre-Christmas Winter's Night games I've ever played, and I'm happy to include it in the 5 games of my life I've ever platinumed on PlayStation. Worth all 98 pence I paid for it. Can't recommend enough. 5 stars. The title rounding off my list and my year in games is none other than Humanity. In fact, I got so engrossed in this one, I actually ended up playing it into the new year too. This game was released in 2023 and was another that had been on my PlayStation Plus list of games to play since then, as it has always looked like the kind of chill indie game I can just kick back and sink a couple hours into every night to unwind, and to a degree, it was that. I went into it based on the interesting premise of controlling hundreds of tiny humans in order to solve platforming puzzles. These kind of puzzle games aren't my usual type of game to take my fancy, but I do like something that flexes my brain muscles, and something just piqued my interest here. Essentially, the game is to guide streams of people across landscapes to reach a goal by placing down prompts, all of which determine direction or apply some kind of effect to the crowd you use them on, and for you to utilise said powers as means of help to guide the people successfully traversing and completing each level. You also play as a Shiba Inu, for some reason. Although the prologue stages begin fairly simple, more so letting you familiarise yourself with the game mechanics than anything else, they soon pick up in complexity, beginning to challenge you in various ways, testing your thinking skills and your patience. Yeah, remember how I thought this would be a chill game to relax to? Far from. I mean, it is still that, just far deeper and well designed than I initially thought. The puzzles this game has to offer are fantastic. There are layers of intricate actions you need to perform in order for everything to work in sync here, oftentimes needing streams of 2 or more people to reach an endpoint, along with you guiding your people to collect goldies. These are larger figures which act as valuable bonus objectives in order to unlock new tools in game, and cosmetics for your little humans, such as suits, rendering them down to blocky versions of themselves, even straight up turning them into walking pronouns. That's right, humanity is woke. Or rather, we the player are needed to get them to that point, hence the premise for our first chapter, Awakening. This begins the story, which you don't really need to pay great attention to in order to just enjoy the game, but it's intriguing nonetheless. The plot of the game revolves around you, the Shiba, being tasked by a mysterious orb into completing trials, helping humanity get to its feet through various tribulations in order to slowly gain sentience. The second sequence has you tackle choice, introducing movable objects and immovable treadmill tracks for you to interact with, leaving you to see fit on how to use them. These initial stages begin to test your foresight and puzzle solving abilities when it comes to mapping out routes and eventually understanding your mistakes through trial and error, with this method of level design leaving you undeniably frustrated at figuring out how to solve a stage, but at the same time in perfect equilibrium, a determination to find the correct path, collect the previously seemingly unattainable goldies in the process, and lead the humans towards the goal point. The reason this game sucked me in so badly is the way it just makes you not want to give up and let the game beat you. The design of these stages being so overwhelmingly oppressive upon loading each one up, making you think, how in God's name do I solve this one? Only through trial and error eventually giving you an epiphanic realisation the solution was staring you in the face all along. This game challenges you to the point you don't want to let it outsmart you, and it's incredibly rewarding, figuring out each level. With the greater the difficulty of the stage, the greater the feeling of satisfaction you're left with when you finally complete it. The game never reaches a point where you have learned everything there is to learn and stages start becoming easy. Levels are always introducing new gameplay mechanics, new environmental obstacles, and new combinations of the two to overcome. Stages remain fresh and engaging throughout, and although there are spikes in difficulty where one level took me half an hour to complete and the one after only a couple of minutes, at no time did I want to give up, to give in, and that's what keeps humanity's gameplay loop so engaging. The fact that the developers over at Sure, were able to create such cohesive and captivating gameplay is testament to their skill at game and puzzle design. Not to mention the absolutely impressive visuals on display. Having hundreds of individual figures rendered all together on screen at once would have once been a fantasy in video game design, so the game's existence also boasts the capabilities of where we're at with consoles in today's age of gaming. The most frustrating portion of the game would have to have been Sequence 3, where the concept of fate is introduced. And I do mean frustrating in a bad way this time. The problem with Sequence 3 being the fact the mechanic of fate means placing down all your commands, positioning things in the environment, and only once you believe everything is ready, launching the level to watch it play out, leaving it in the hands of you get it. Conceptually, this approach to level design isn't a bad one and can be enjoyable, only so often it isn't. The levels don't drop in quality based on design or anything, it's just the game thus far has been letting you control everything on the fly, making adjustments as you play and the like. Now it yanks that away from you, which yes presents a new challenge, but in doing so drags each stage in the sequence out to twice the length it needs to be. It just gets tedious when repetitive actions stop feeling progressive each time you make a change, because you could have half the level sorted and yet you'll need to watch the whole thing play out to see where you made your mistake, which could just be a misplaced prompt, only then to watch the whole thing over again and again and again. It's boring watching the same sequence of events play out knowing that they need no changes but being forced to watch it anyway, and that's with the fast forward tool in use, which really isn't as fast as it needs to be. Once the sequence is over, however, the game becomes enjoyable again, so I'm glad this bump didn't make me put down the game entirely. Once the game picks back up, an enemy faction dubbed the Others are introduced. At first they act as means of huge waves of moving obstacles to avoid, and you'd sometimes compete against to overcome levels. Inevitably, they become enemies, however, with both sides taking up arms and the trials turning from peacefully traversing a platform one to another to strategically commanding armies one against another, switching up gameplay and incorporating RTS elements, which again I wouldn't normally be into, but here I loved it. Intermittently slotted between every couple of sequences are core trials, small boss battle-esque stages that take everything you've learned over the past sequences and quite impressively utilise the gameplay of this puzzle platformer to craft visually and mechanically impressive fights to pit you against. Seriously, these were a wildly enjoyable surprise when they popped up, and I was in shock at how well made they are and how well they function in a game like this. It's not just the devs who have made levels for this game in story mode either. Community stages also exist, and I spent a good few days exploring the vast and truly impressive catalogue at my fingertips here too. Around Christmas time, I enjoyed the Holiday Jam playlist, comprised of plenty of festive themed levels. People really have made some incredibly creative stages, and you'd be remiss not to give them a go. Who wouldn't want to enjoy the worlds of Green Hill Zone that's already in every Sonic game, the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars episode Star Wars, or Attack on Titan, what the fuck? I could easily gush over this game for an entire video of its own, but I'll leave it there for now, and encourage you, if you're going to play one of the games seen here today, make it this one. It's on PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass as of making this video, so please give it a go. You may just find yourself discovering and getting obsessed with something you never thought you'd be into. And that brings an end to my 2024 Indie Hour catch-up. I actually had a really fun time writing this one out and effortlessly yapping about the odd indie titles I never covered this year, so maybe I'll do it again in another year, if I have anything I want to talk about again. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear my opinions on other indie games, there's half a dozen videos on the channel to check out, with more on the way. Seriously, my list of indie games to play is ever growing. In fact, I have a whole list just for indies separate from my main list, so I don't think I'll be done anytime in the near future. And please do like, subscribe, and if you watch to the end, hopefully I'll see you in another one soon. Bye gamers.